is the Steve Freeman Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Steve Freeman Podcast. So good to be here with you, and I'm glad you're here. While you're here, don't forget, rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast, especially if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating. That matters. Believe me, it matters. And take 60 seconds to leave us a short written review. I really appreciate it. Anything we talk about that I refer to in the podcast today, you can always find in the show notes section of the podcast. You can also find it at my site, thestevefreeman.com. You can find it in the description if you're watching on YouTube or watching on Facebook. If you like watching the video versions, all that information is in the show notes or description sections. I'd also like to invite you to become a member of our private Steve Freeman Podcast Facebook group. The link, again, in the show notes. Everything's in the show notes. Links to all social media, everything. But there's some cool shit going on over in the Facebook group, and I highly recommend you come join us. It's absolutely free. There's no charge or anything like that. But you do have to be approved, either by myself or a couple of the moderators of the group, which, right away, there's no reason for us not to approve you. I have been seeing some posts that have not been approved, and I know why they were not approved, and that's totally cool. But we would love to have you over there. Go to facebook.com/the Steve Freeman, and you can click the button right there, and you can join the group. If you are interested in being a part of the Music Business Mindset Mentorship Program, go to thestevefreeman.com. Right there in the header, click that button and put your email in, and that will let me know that you're interested in possibly being selected as one of the next 5 people that I'm going to work with over the next 90 days, one-on-one. It's a great program. Plus, everybody that gets accepted into the program, you also get a 1-year membership to the Artist Development Academy. It's awesome. I work with these 5 people for 90 days, one-on-one. We do Zoom, Skype calls every single week to set goals, keep you lined out, let you know where you're at, what you're doing. I help develop the strategy for you, social media strategy, content strategy, your brand. We go over it all and get you heading in the right direction in 90 days. It's a lot of fun. It's the Music Business Mindset Mentorship Program. If you're interested in being chosen as one of the 5, then go over there and do it now. I'm going to be selecting those people actually in the next few days. I've already picked 3, and I'm looking for 2 more people that I think really will benefit from this the most. So if you're interested, go click on that and get involved. Now, here's the thing. If you don't get picked this round, it doesn't mean that you won't ever get picked. So just, go there, click the button, and let me know that you're interested. What I want to talk about today on the podcast is something that I get quite often. And in all honesty, it's probably the most asked question that I get. It's also even goes down to artists that I work with and or clients through our agency. And that is, everybody wants to know, how do I make it happen faster? It's taking too long. And sometimes it hasn't even been long enough for it to take too long. Sometimes it's right at the beginning before we even get started. What always happens is we always get hit with expectations first. How long is it going to take? If we're consulting somebody on like a podcast or a YouTube channel or something like that, how long is it going to take me to get to 1,000 subscribers? Well, I don't know, because that is not in my control. And a lot of people get uncomfortable when they hear honesty. And I think a lot of times when I tell people the answer to the question, they get uncomfortable because my direct answer is, I have no fucking clue. I'm not the one creating the content. I'm not the one. Now, we're going to tell you how to do all of this stuff, but we're not the ones responsible for doing it. So if I'm not the one responsible for doing it, I have no idea. I have no idea how many subscribers you're going to get. I have no idea how many people are going to follow you on Spotify. I have no idea how many people are going to watch your video. I don't know. Now, I do know all of the tools that it takes in order for all of those things to happen in a timely manner. Again, going back to what we've talked about 100 gazillion times, and that is the 3 pillars of success: persistence, consistency, and a willingness to sacrifice. A lot of times the sacrifice part of this comes in when we're talking about time. Look, I'm just like you guys. I want things when I start something or I get involved in something, I want it to happen as fast as humanly possible. It's just our nature. I don't know anybody that has the patience of Job. I don't. I was born with a significant lack of patience. I have none. I don't have it with myself. I don't have it for other people. I just don't have patience. It's just not something I'm capable of. Believe me, God has tried to teach me the lesson of learning patience over and over and over and over again, and I'm not good at learning it. I'm just not. And he knows it. That's why he keeps trying to teach me the lesson. But listen, I really want to talk about this. Guys, your business, your career, this is a marathon. It is not a sprint. Matter of fact, the people that I can point to, that I can think about, that I've been involved with or that I've known, the faster it's happened, the faster it went away. I believe in building either, whether it's your brand or it's your music career or it's your YouTube career, your content creator career, your real estate career, your cookie selling business, whatever it is. I believe in growing things slowly. The reason is a lot of times, like when it comes to cooking, when you slow roast something or you slow cook something, it always tastes better because the process has been gone through thoroughly. Everything has been vetted out. And as you go along, you're building solid stepping stones underneath you. So when you reach a certain point, if you go too fast, you're going to get to a point too fast. And then if you get knocked back a couple pegs, most of the time, people in that situation find themselves starting all the way over again, which is what you don't want to do. If you take things slow and you realize that you're running a marathon and this isn't a sprint, that as you move along and as you progress forward just a little bit, you're laying solid ground underneath you to where when unexpected things happen, when life happens, as it always does, life always happens. It feels like we take 3 steps forward and 4 steps back. That is life. That is the way things are going to happen. But when successful people who build their businesses and build their brands the way that I've built mine, because I built mine watching other very successful people and how they did it. And their goal was not to get there as soon as humanly possible. It was to build solid ground underneath them. That way, when you get there and life happens and shit's going to happen and you're going to have setbacks and things aren't going to go your way, you're going to make wrong turns, you're going to make bad decisions. When those things happen and you get knocked back a little bit, you're literally knocked back onto solid ground. Then you just readdress, you reapproach, and you take that step again. You're not falling all the way back to the bottom of the staircase. That is what happens when you guys try to approach this as a sprint. I understand what goes into starting a business. I understand what goes into starting a brand. You guys are faced with costs, with financial responsibilities. You're looking at it from a standpoint of wanting your ROI as soon as possible. For those of you that don't know, ROI is return on investment. But I had a business partner one time that I classify when I talk to groups or I go and I speak or consulting with businesses. I generally tell them this story. I had a business partner one time who was in the beer business and the Coke business, not cocaine. God, somebody will email about that. Like Coca-Cola. And they own many distributorships. And for the life of this person, they could not understand that the music business was not like a Coke machine. They expected when they came in as an investor in this business that it was going to operate like a Coke machine. So you put your dollar in, you select the product, and it immediately drops out the bottom. So they thought, oh, we're going to put this investment in 6 months, we're going to have all this money. Despite the fact that for 2 years leading up to actually going into business together, every conversation we had, I told them that was not the case. That is not going to happen. Especially when it comes to the music business, when it comes to publishing, when it comes to record labels, it doesn't work that way. You can put out a product today and you may not see a return on that investment for 6 years. That's possible, especially in publishing, where you may write a song today. It may take 10 years to get that song cut. But this person didn't understand that. They expected to put the money in, hit a button, and then watch the money fall out the bottom. Almost like a slot machine, you're guaranteed to win. You put your $5 bill in or your quarter, your 75 cents, you hit the button, and all of a sudden, 3 sevens, and everybody wins. Now, I know you know when I say that sounds ridiculous. But I also know that somewhere in the deep recesses of each one of your minds, you have that expectation. Because you're thinking, well, if I'm going to put in my time, I'm going to put in my money, I'm going to use my relationships, I am expecting a certain return. And listen, it's okay to have expectations. I'm not talking about not having expectations. Now, I will say, expectations 99.9% of the time lead to disappointment. But it's because of how we classify and expect those expectations to come to fruition. We expect them to happen quickly. We expect an expedient return on our investment. It never happens that way. Very, very rarely. Anything, and I'll tell you this too, anything worth building is not going to come quickly. Think about it in these terms, if you will. Let's say that you and your family are. It actually used this analogy once, and it got through to this person. So I'm going to see if this works on you guys as well. Let's say that for whatever this is so weird because some people have very hard time when I do this because everybody they approach things so fucking literally. Use your brain here a little bit, and I'm not talking to 99.9% of you. I'm talking mainly to those of you that'll watch on YouTube and go, well, that scenario would never happen. Blah, 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 blah. To those 1% of you motherfuckers, I wish you'd just quit listening and watching. In all honesty, I do. But for those of you, the 99.9% of you that are smart and educated and have a little bit of fucking common sense, you'll understand this. So let's say that somebody came to you this morning and said, look, you and your family are going to be involved in a head-on collision today. It's unavoidable. There's nothing you can do to avoid it. You are going to be involved in a head-on collision. You have 2 choices. You can choose one of these 2 vehicles that you and your family are going to be in when this head-on collision happens. Now, one of these options is an SUV that our engineers built within the last 24 hours. I'm talking from start to finish. They built this thing very quickly, but very efficiently. Or you can choose this SUV over here that took the engineers 2 years to build. Now, you've got to choose one of them. And you know it's guaranteed you're going to be involved in a head-on collision. Which one of those vehicles are you going to choose? Now, I know every single time, every single one of you listening is going to choose the one that was built that took 2 years to build. Why? Because subconsciously, you're thinking to yourself, if it took longer to build, then it's quality. It's higher quality than this one that was put together in the last 24 hours. They had more time to work on it. They had more time to test it. They had more time to go through the electronic systems and the airbag systems and everything else that's going to be in place to hopefully protect us when this head-on collision happens. They took the time. They had 2 years to make sure this vehicle was prepared to be on the road. I don't know anybody that's going to go, now I'll take the one that was built in 24 hours. I feel 100% secure and safe hopping in this vehicle, putting my kids in this vehicle, knowing we're going to have a head-on collision with the fucking Mack truck. I'll hop in the one. I'll take the one that was built in the last 24 hours. None of you would do that. So explain to me why you expect your business to be any different. Why do you expect your brand to be any different? Using that scenario, would not the business that you want be better if it took you 2 years to build it? Is it as convenient? No. Is it going to get there as fast? Probably not. But you're safer. The longer it takes to build something, the more quality it is. It's just the way that it is. Nobody would get in that vehicle that had been assembled in 24 hours. So don't approach your business that way. Anything that you do, don't approach anything that way. Why in the world would you have that sort of expectation for yourself? It doesn't matter what you paid for it. It doesn't matter how much time you've put into it. It doesn't matter whether or not you think you've paid your dues, and so those dues automatically make things happen faster. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. And when you can get that through your head and you can realize that this is going to take time, and most of the time, what I wish people would do is realize that in the beginning. This should be one of the thought processes that you are going through before you even begin, is sitting down and realizing and explaining to yourself, selling to yourself, in fact, that this is going to take time, that I know that I have expectations that are unreal. So I've got to eliminate that up front. That way, when you get going and you pull the trigger, you're not dealing with it at that moment, which is what most people do. Most people don't think about the sacrifice in. They are fine with the persistence. They are fine with the consistency as long as it doesn't take too long. And I often find that people's goals have a time limit. You're fine with setting the goal out there and identifying the goal and visualizing the goal. You're good with that part of it. What you're not good at is 8 months later when you've still been spending money and you've still been being persistent, you've still been being consistent, and things are not happening as fast as you would like them to happen. That's most of the time when you start thinking about this, and then it's too late. If you will set yourself up for a marathon, you will be much better. Another analogy, think about long-distance runners, if you will. The preparation process for a person who runs the 100-yard dash and somebody who runs whatever they are, I'm not familiar with them. Again, I don't exercise, but I know there's a difference in a marathon and a sprint. Those people that do the Ironman stuff, the people that do like the Boston Marathon, that is different than doing a 40-yard dash. A lot of you guys out there are preparing like you're going to run the 40-yard dash, not really understanding that you are running the Boston Marathon. So what happens is when you get to that 40-yard mark, anything beyond that 40 yards is going to be very taxing on your body because you didn't prepare for the long haul. You prepared for that 40 yards. And I'm encouraging you guys, stop getting in the middle of what it is you're trying to do and then realizing that you don't have the stamina that it takes to do it. This should be a part of your process in the very beginning. I can't tell you the number of times people that come to me with a 6-month plan or a year plan. Guys, 6 months and a year is just enough time for everything to go wrong. You're not even going to have yourself. You're not even going to have your product. You're not even going to have your business. You're not going to have any of that figured out in 6 months. Because what happens is when you get out there and you start putting all of this out there, you're relying on other people to help things grow. Well, you've got to identify how people want content delivered. That's something we've learned on this podcast. It blows my mind because I started this whole thing on YouTube. So I was very familiar with YouTube and I knew how to make things grow on YouTube. I knew it was going to be slow. I wasn't going to do the other things that everybody else was doing, like the clickbait stuff and all that to get the views and the subscribers very quickly. I was more willing to play the long game. But when we started the podcast, what I didn't know and what I wasn't aware of at the time was that for podcasts, YouTube and audio podcasts are completely separate. The audience that I had grown on YouTube were not fond of video episodes of podcasts, but I'm committed to the podcast, and so I'm not going to stop doing it, even though I joke about it occasionally. Every episode that I don't know why I continue to do the video versions, but we're going to keep doing it because I'm playing the long game. But I will tell you, it's something that I'm learning that I've learned just in the last 6-8 months. I was not prepared for it. I thought I knew. So I was prepared when I started doing the podcast. I thought, man, I'm getting all these views on my regular videos on YouTube. When I start adding the podcast videos in there, my channel's going to grow 3 times more. I think at the time I was putting up 1 video a week. And now I do 2 episodes of the podcast a week. So in my brain, I was thinking like most of you think most of the time. And my thought was my channel's going to grow 3 times as fast. It didn't. It went in the opposite direction. My growth got literally cut by 1/3 and it stopped growing. I was growing hundreds of subscribers, thousands of subscribers, and then it just stopped. And then it started going the other way, and we started losing subscribers because they were not interested in this kind of content. Meanwhile, on the audio side of the podcast, they were not interested in videos. They're interested in the audio versions, and hundreds of thousands of you guys listen to the podcast every month. I wasn't prepared. I didn't know the audience. I didn't know their preference when I went into this. I should have taken the time, or at least been prepared to go, this is not going to work out exactly the way that I'm seeing it. It's going to take some testing. It's going to take some A/B split testing to figure out how the audience wants this delivered. And then I also probably should have thought that this is a completely different audience. These are things you're not going to know in 6 months. These are things that you might not even know in a year. So when you're sitting down and by the way, this 6 month or a year, that is a sprint. When I'm talking time, you need to dedicate the next 5 years of your life to building something from where you are now at the beginning until where you see it possibly cresting over the top of that mountain and starting to be successful. 5 years. Now, I know a lot of you don't like to hear that. Mainly, you don't like to hear that because you know, again, somewhere back in the dark recesses of your mind, that I'm right. And we are a culture and a society of instant gratification. We want it right now. And everything around us has made that possible. Case in point, last weekend. Why? I don't know. I love Little Caesars Pizza. It's the cheapest pizza on the planet. Well, it's not the cheapest. I would go with CC's there. But I love pizza, and I love Little Caesars. Little Caesars. Let's do something together, man. But I was just in and I'm like, I don't want this other, I want Little Caesars. I want the basic fucking pepperoni pizza. I want it hot and ready, and I want it right now. But I didn't want to drive to go get it. But our society makes it so possible that there's DoorDash, Uber Eats, Postmates, Grubhub. There's 5 different services that can make sure that I don't have to go anywhere. All I have to do is sit on my ass, watch football, and wait on the doorbell to ring. That is everywhere around us. You want something? Amazon Prime now. It'll have it in your door in 2 hours. You want to? There's a movie you've been thinking about you want to see? You don't have to wait for it to come to the theater. You get on HBO Max, or you get on Vudu, or you get on Amazon, or you get on Netflix, and there it is. Technology has gotten us to a point, and it's really caused us to set our expectation level way too high because we expect to be gratified instantly. And most things in our life can do that. They'll deliver Starbucks to you now. Anything you want, you can have delivered within 2 hours. From hookers to coffee. You can have it. So when we get in our businesses, we get in our brains, we get in our minds, we get in our goals, we start to think through it through that lens. Well, if I can have this pizza delivered and I don't have to go get it, why should it take me 2 years to get my business off the ground instead of 3 months? And it's a logical thought process. Don't get me wrong. I find myself doing it all the time. And I'm not up here on some fucking high horse and saying, well, you know, I do things this. No, I do it too. Every single time I start something, I expect for it to happen as fast as humanly possible. And every time I'm wrong. Everything that I've ever done that I know for a fact, though, everything that I've ever done that has been very successful or that has lived up to my expectations of it anyway, has taken time. There are some things that I'm benefiting from financially right now that were seeds that were sown 12 years ago, 13 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago. It's our job as the farmers of our lives and the farmers of our careers. It is our job to plant the seeds and water them. There is nothing we can do to make them grow faster. If we start using chemicals and all these other things to get them to grow faster, they're not as healthy. Again, another great analogy for your business. I get hit with the question all the time about money. Money never starts the fire. It is only an accelerant. But oftentimes I find when we start talking about money, I had a very good conversation with one of our clients the other day about this. And she gets it. She understands it. We're helping her grow her business from a local business in Ohio to a national brand. And we were talking about expectations. We were talking about timelines and well, how soon, and I'm like, stop worrying about how soon. Take the proper steps. And she got it. She's willing to financially invest in her business at the level that it takes to meet her own expectations. But I often find when money and finances start to become a part of the conversation, that's where everybody gets uncomfortable. And I think a lot of times we think and we try to make things happen on as short of a timeline as possible because we have a finite of funds in which to make it happen. And I'm going to put this out there right now. If you do not have a way of securing financing to start your business and grow your business the way that it should be, then don't do it at all. And that's an unpopular opinion. Everybody else out there is talking about just do it. Just get started. Just do it. Use what you got. I don't believe in that. I believe starting businesses and running brands that way runs brands into the ground because expectations get set too high. You end up spending way too much money in a short amount of time. And it's almost like filling up a helium balloon and it goes up, but then eventually the helium is going to come out of the balloon and it's going to sink and it's going to sag. And then your business winds up being fucking pinned to the wall in some 3-year-old's bedroom. Honestly, if you're not prepared to do it properly, then don't do it at all. And one of the main key ingredients of that, to me, is being prepared up front and realizing that this is a marathon. It is not a sprint. If you're interested in running sprints, then have sprint-like mentalities and sprint-like expectations. If you're working on a project and it's something that needs to be done by Friday, then put everything into that and you're expecting that return within that time frame, that's fine. That's a sprint. But what you cannot do is expect to win a marathon and prepare for a short-term sprint. It'll never happen. You will not have the staying power. A few things I wanted to pass on that I think will help you in preparing for your marathon. Be a positive thinker. Now, I don't buy into the secret bullshit and the manifest this and visualize and it shall appear because it doesn't happen. Believe me, I've been visualizing a Lamborghini in my driveway for a very long time and it never fucking shows up. I don't know. But think positively. I think also a part of thinking positively is thinking honestly. And that's a step that most of us forget to do. We get so focused on being excited about what we want to do. We visualize the end set of circumstances. We visualize living in that success. We visualize where we want to be. Some of us even convince ourselves along the way that we're there. Had another conversation with an artist about this the other day. They are convinced they're already there. They're not. They're a long fucking way from being where they want to be, but they've convinced themselves that they're there. And have no understanding. They don't even know when things are going wrong because nothing goes wrong in their world. Think honestly about yourself. It is important to think positive, but think honestly. Set honest and realistic goals and expectations on yourself. Do the thing you're passionate about. And this one is a huge one. We talk to so many different businesses and people that want to start businesses. And what they've done, I don't know if they have a fucking subscription to Entrepreneur Magazine or what. And there's a list that comes out, top 10 start-at-home businesses or whatever. Stop chasing things that you're not passionate about. You're going to lose enthusiasm. You're going to be disappointed. 9 times out of 10, you don't know enough about what it is that you're getting into to make it successful anyway. So you're certainly not going to be prepared for the marathon. Start your brand, start your business, build those things off of things that you're passionate about. Because then you won't lose enthusiasm. It's going to be an enjoying ride along the way because again, we're gearing up here for a very long journey. Why in the world would you set out on a cross-country trip that you knew you were going to have to ride in a car for 2,500 miles and load your iPad up with shows you hate? You would never do that. You would load your iPad up with shows that you love because it's going to make the trip easier. It's going to make the trip go by more and you're going to enjoy it. Approach everything you do that way. Think big. I work with too many people, and have in the past, who have an issue with thinking big. Any idea you want to give me, in 30 seconds, I can give you a bigger one. Now, it's a blessing and it's a curse. But I've always believed that if you shoot for the moon, you're going to at least hit the stars. The expectation level that is matched with, though, is I always expect to hit the stars. I don't ever expect to hit the moon. I know the stars are within my reach, and I know that I can hit them. I don't know if I can hit the moon or not. Occasionally, maybe. But all the time, who knows? Think big. Don't limit yourself. Don't limit your success. Don't limit your goals. When you start limiting things and thinking small, that is exactly what you're going to wind up with on the other end. Whatever you start with and go in with is what you're going to come out with on the other end. So if you're thinking small, you're going to come out small on the other end. Don't let your failure define you. I know some people that are just perpetual failures. They just walk around. It's almost weirdly and oddly like a badge of honor. They cloak themselves in failure. And it almost becomes their identity. They're just habitual failures. You cannot let your failure define you because, as I've said many times, you will fail. You'll fail over and over and over and over again. Most of the time, when I start seeing people that I can just tell right off the bat that they definitely let their failure define them, those are people that prepared for a sprint and ran a marathon. Always. Finally, keep setting your goals. Realize that your goals also need to be moldable, they need to be malleable, and they need to be mobile. They will change from time to time. And if you're properly preparing for a marathon, you will realize that that goal gets moved over and over and over and over again, because as you're in process of doing the thing that you're doing and growing your brand, growing your business, learning more, educating yourself more, scaling your business, as you get into that process, you're going to realize that you have different sets of goals. And ultimately, in some case, you may have a different end goal. I'm the perfect example. Excuse me. Get some coffee. If you would have come to me 12 years ago, 15 years ago, and said that at some point in your career, you're going to transition out of producing records, you won't be writing songs anymore, but you're going to be working with actors, film production companies, and from a music perspective, you're going to be developing the careers of other artists, I would have told you you're crazy, because that wasn't the goal. I knew nothing 15 years ago about owning a film production company or owning an artist and brand management agency. I knew nothing about it. But the goal changed. Now, I was prepared for a marathon. I'm still running that marathon. And I don't know that the goals that I have right now, even the goals that I'm achieving, are the goals that I want to continue to achieve. That may change in another 5 years. It may change next week. So what I'm saying, guys, stop approaching everything you do with the mentality of hoping that it happens as fast as humanly possible. When you do that, you are setting yourself up for ultimate failure. Like I said, you're going to fail all the time. You're going to fail often. Look forward to it. But what you can't afford to do is learn from those individual failures and fail overall. It's well within your power. Start training yourself for the marathon. Nothing happens fast. Nothing at all. Be prepared for the marathon. Guys, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast, especially on Apple Podcasts. If you want to leave a written review, rate us 5 stars. We'll feature it right here on the podcast. We'd love to have you a member of our private Steve Freeman Podcast Facebook group as well. Go to facebook.com/The Steve Freeman. All the links to social media, everything, show notes, anything you want to know about this episode or anything else, you can always find in the show notes section of the podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, it's in the description section. If you're watching on Facebook, I don't know what Facebook calls it. I think it's a description section too. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I will see you on the next episode. Until then, keep being creative, keep pressing the boundaries, and there's nothing wrong with being independent. See you next time.
The Steve Freeman Podcast. Available now on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and everywhere else you get your podcasts.